Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. I've got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. We have a lot of games to get to today. 10 different Big Ten games because USC decides to play Notre Dame and UCLA decides to play Fresno State on the last week of the season. It's rivalry week. Did you know that UCLA and Fresno State are rivals, Zach? Did you have any idea?
Listen, it is one of the best rivalry games that I've never heard of.
The Bruins and the Dogs.
Yes,
Just kidding.
yes.
It's not a rivalry game, but they have inserted themselves into rivalry week, so we will talk about them. We'll get to
It's
all of the
fair.
games, but Zach, our first thing to get to, actually, I'll say this really fast. I'll say it later on. Hello, Road Dust. Thank you for being here. Good evening as well.
Yo, Rob Dust.
If you are starting out in the show and you're here with us to begin, I will say this later on as well, like I said, but we do have a lot of you that comment and chat, and we so appreciate that. We love the interaction with you guys. Unfortunately, we cannot always get to every single comment. That is just it take up the entire show to do that, and you guys have really good comments. So if you have we will still interact with the chat by all means, but if you guys ever have a comment that maybe we didn't get to and you really want it highlighted, or a question you have for us, please send that in as a super chat. That's the best way for us to make sure we have it highlighted and make sure we get to it. We might not get to it right exactly at that time. I'll see, if it pertains to exactly what we're talking about, but we will for sure get to it. So we're not begging for money or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying, if you got a comment that you really want read or talked about, that's the best. That's the best way to do it. So, all right, Zach, let's talk about these college football playoff rankings. All right, so Ward Manuel came on the screen, and Reese Davis did his little thing where he tried to ask about three college football playoff or college football teams with three losses, if they could ever get above another team that has two, maybe even one loss, Zach. And his answer was, well, if we feel like they should be. What an awful answer. Your thoughts, Zach?
Why is it that it seems like every person that is the head of a committee just sounds incompetent?
Yep.
Cuz it's not I think Ward Manuel is a particularly there's a particular brand of incompetence there that might be my Ohio State ness coming out, by the way. It is hate week, by the way. But it just seems like every year it's their explanation is just, well, because we feel like it. And it's yeah, that's not the point.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about what you feel like. What are your metrics? Tell us what the metrics are from the beginning and be consistent with those metrics. It's not supposed to be about feel.
Right.
And I get it's subjective, but this is my one frustration with the college football playoff process, and it always has been, is it's never about objectivity. Because you can make anything say what you want to say. I was just having a debate with someone in the chat of another video, and it's I'm going to disregard all the bad things about Arkansas to highlight that they beat Tennessee and make that a good win. It's dude, they lost to Oklahoma State. That's they stink. Okay,
Yeah.
but we ignore that. And we only highlight the metrics that we care about, which means that all objectivity is lost. And so this is why, as much as I think it'll derail the tradition of conferences, I feel like at some point you have to go to conferences, super conferences, where whoever wins their division is in the playoff. Because it's stupid. It's how can you justify? I mean, how do you justify anything at this point? It's just what you think is right.
I've said, which by the way, Philip is correct. All comments that insult bro casual, they will get read. That is correct. Thank you, Philip, for making sure we make that distinction there. No, I tell people this all the time, and they never believe me, which is fine. Whatever. Call me a conspiracy theorist. Whatever. Like the people that complain about the idea of super conference and all that stuff the most are the SEC fans. They're the
Yep.
ones that don't want that to happen. They want the regionality and everything else. But guess which conference was the one that declared they're just better than everybody else, and so they should get 2 teams in the national championship with the BCS, and they should get favorability. If their team has 3 losses, they should still be ahead of a team with 1 loss because of strength of schedule and everything else. Guess who that was? It was the SEC. And so now all these other conferences are fighting back and saying, hey, we want an automatic bid for our conference champion. Yep. Hey, we want you to realize that, just because somebody is 5th place in the Big Ten doesn't mean they would lose every single game in your SEC conference, as you claim what happened. Just because you have all the recruiting rankings down in your area does not mean that your conference just has superiority over everybody and everybody else must bow down to you. That's what's going to lead us to super conferences. People in the Big 12 are going to get tired of being in the Big 12 and being looked upon. People in the Big 10 are tired of being looked upon as a second-tier conference to the SEC. That's what happened with the Pac-12, right?
Yep.
People were leaving the Pac-12 to go to the Big Ten because they were like, we want to be in a conference with better competition so that way we can be recognized when we are better. And because Utah won it in, 2022, and they didn't make the college football playoffs. And USC realized if we go to a Pac-12 championship game and we lose, we are not getting in the college football playoffs, 4 teams. And at that point, it's just pretty ridiculous, which I find funny that, that's what the SEC fans are chanting for now. Well, if we lose in the championship game, it shouldn't count against us. It's counted against everybody. So if it happens, it happens. And I realize me complaining about the committee is kind of like, you're an Ohio State fan. Like, why would you complain? They have you second. That's the thing. Like, even with my Ohio State fandom, I still think they're just plain stupid.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, and if we're honest, Ohio State is going to often benefit, especially in a 12-team world. In the 4-team world, they often got left out. But in a 12-team world, Ohio State is in a great spot. My frustration, SMU, Indiana, this is legitimately my concern with the way this is right now. Are they going to jump Clemson over SMU or Indiana if they beat Texas or if they beat South Carolina this week?
And Alabama?
No, Clemson.
Or Ole Miss?
Clemson.
Sorry.
Clemson over Indiana or SMU. And I'm like, man, Clemson has not played a great schedule. And they have 2 losses. Now, one of them is to Georgia. I get that. But, I mean, they got drilled by Georgia. They got drilled by Georgia worse than Indiana got drilled by Ohio State. And so, and it's like, why? Well, because we think Clemson's better. It's like, based on what? Based on a win against an overrated, an overranked South Carolina team? Which, grant, South Carolina has dudes, especially on the D-line. But they're not a complete team. And I think that's the frustration is it's like, man, we're really the haves are always going to get preference over the have-nots in this type of a system because Indiana, I hated the conversation with Indiana going into the Ohio State game because it's like, well, they need this game to validate who they are. No, they don't. If their logo said Michigan or Alabama or Ole Miss, nobody Texas, nobody would care. But the reality is the logo's the Hoosiers. And the same thing's true with SMU. I think it's going to be a travesty. I would almost bet one of them is going to get dropped, even if they win out. And SMU might win the ACC, but if SMU wins out and then loses the ACC championship game, I think they're going to get left out, or I think Indiana's going to get left out, and I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I think your concern about Clemson is valid. I think if you're an Indiana fan, you're rooting hard for South Carolina to win that game, but you shouldn't have to. At the end of the day, Indiana has done enough to show that they are a college football playoff team. I said last week that if Indiana loses, I don't believe they will get into the playoffs. And I had a lot of Indiana fans come at me and say, you don't believe in Indiana, you think Indiana's bad. That's not the case at all. I ranked Indiana 5th in my top 12. I think Indiana is very good. I think the thing that Indiana has going against them is the SEC bias and the Southern bias
Mhm.
of, recruiting rankings and everything else there. I truly do believe that if Clemson beats South Carolina, you are going to see Clemson get over Indiana. And then if some other kind of magical situation happens, if somebody, beats somebody else, who knows what's going to happen in the next rankings, but it could happen. And I said that because Ohio State last year, they were number 2. When they lost to Michigan, who was number 1, Ohio State dropped 6 spots. Ohio State lost at number 1 by 1 score. 1 score. They lost at number 1 by 1 score last year, and they dropped 6 spots in the college football playoff rankings. Zach, Alabama just lost to Oklahoma. Guess how many spots they dropped?
I think 5, right? Or was it
6?
6? Yeah.
6 spots. You're telling me that Alabama needs to drop the same amount of spots at the end of the season, losing to a barely bowl eligible team that thankfully they played a cupcake so that way they can make sure that they get to 6 wins? Like, you're telling me they deserve to drop the same amount of spots after getting killed? Not beat, not beat just a little bit, but killed. They got destroyed by Oklahoma. You're telling me that they should drop the same amount of spots as Ohio State losing to Michigan last year, and only 1 more spot than Indiana, who was ranked 5th, losing to the number 2 team in the nation at home. It makes absolutely no sense. Ole Miss just lost to Florida, another team. Well, they don't have a cupcake because they play Miami out of conference, so it's a weird situation where they actually do have 9 Power 4 teams they play. And actually 10 because they play Florida State as well, which Florida State not a Power 4
Florida
team
State doesn't count this year.
Yeah,
they don't
not
count
this year.
They're
No,
awful.
That's basically their cupcake this year. Anyway, so but they lost to Florida, which granted by 1 score on the road. Florida did have DJ Lagway, which I don't subscribe to that theory, but I know people do, that Florida's just like a top 25 team with them. That's fine, whatever. They dropped 5 spots. 5 spots in this. Alabama dropped 6 for losing to Oklahoma. Like, so sometimes it's not always just like, oh, well, there's no SEC bias because look, Alabama's 13th. It's, well, Alabama just lost to Oklahoma. And they dropped the same amount of spots as Ohio State dropped last year after losing to the number 1 team in the nation. Like, and I get the committees are different and everything, but it makes absolutely no sense. And it puts these teams back into position where if they get a big win, they have the opportunity to jump a team like Indiana. And I hate to say it because I really, like I said, I really do believe Indiana deserves to be in. But if Clemson wins, you're looking at a situation where Indiana probably gets knocked out and Clemson jumps over them.
There's one other thing I want to point out that has nothing to do with Big Ten or SEC, but I think it's insane. Kansas State, well, so Tulane is 1 spot below Arizona State.
Yes.
If Tulane finds a way to get past whoever is the Big 12 champ, the Big 12 will be out of the playoff.
Oh yeah, that's true because Boise State is Mountain West.
Yeah.
And it's just the 5 highest conference champions. If Arizona State loses, who do they play this weekend?
Do they play Arizona?
Oh, it just went to Big 10. Come on, go to Big 12. Yes, Arizona. At Arizona.
Yeah. And here's the crazy thing. Kansas State beat Tulane at Tulane earlier this season. So, like, what is the committee doing here? Because, like,
I guess the only thing I would push back on is Iowa State does play Kansas State.
Yes.
So I think you're looking at a good and Tulane plays at home against Memphis, which Memphis is 9-2. So they do have the record there, but they've not played anybody, out of conference or anything. So I think you could see Iowa State jump Tulane if Iowa State wins this weekend. But again, like you said, if Arizona State and Iowa State lose, Tulane's your 5th seed or your 12th seed.
Yeah. I just think it's crazy because I'm like, I mean, if we're going to apply similar logic, it's like the only Power 4 teams that Tulane has played, they have lost to.
Mm-hmm.
They lost.
Not even playoff teams, right?
Yeah. They lost to Kansas State and they lost to Oklahoma. And they lost to Oklahoma by 15.
Yeah. Well, so did Alabama by
Yeah.
more, and they're
Yeah.
higher ranked.
Yeah, that's fair.
More SEC bias there.
Yeah. By the way, the score, the Oklahoma Alabama score is so misleading. I mean, if you look at the box score, it's bad, man. Like
Yeah,
they ran the ball, so they passed for 68 yards. They ran it for 257.
they ran it all over him. Yeah,
I mean, they couldn't stop them. And it's like that's the like Alabama, that's the team that you want to make sure gets in the playoff. That 3-loss team? Like what? Like
yeah,
really?
yeah. No, I get you. I get you. I did have Alabama ranked 12th in my top 12, so I can't argue too much with the spot of where they have them. I think they should have dropped more. I actually would have probably had Alabama a little bit higher in my top 12, so I think they should have dropped more. But at the end of the day, like just based off what we saw, I would have had somebody else probably jump Alabama at some point who, deserved to be in it, whether it's Clemson or somebody else, even though they don't really deserve to be in it. I probably would have had them jump them at that point because Alabama, I mean, even against Auburn, like Auburn is not a good football team. I know they beat Texas A&M, but they lost to Cal. Like they're not a good football team.
Yeah.
So
I think sorry, do you mind if I share one? I think that's the thing that's maddening is like we can talk about the relative depth of the SEC. Oh man, Philip's on me now for Kent State. What the heck?
you're never gonna live it down.
John Jacobs, your spirit lives on in Philip. That's awesome. But like everybody wants to prop up the SEC, but it's like there are these albatrosses. Like Georgia State finally has a win against a Sun Belt team. It only took them 8 weeks, but they beat Vandy. And it's like that has to matter, especially when Vandy then beats Alabama or Arkansas beats Tennessee or Auburn loses to the team that you just said, Cal. And it's like, man, like if you're going to treat all these other conference like mid-tier teams like they're garbage, but then be like, well, Oklahoma's pretty good. It's like, just stop. Like they're not good.
Yeah.
They're all good or they're all average. Like,
yeah. They just want them to think they're good, so that way they get a better win at the end of the day. So, let's see a few comments really fast, and then we'll move on. Road Dust says, "I really hate the thought of a 3-loss A&M team making the SEC championship and bumping all the way up to the CFP ranks. That's true. If they beat Texas this weekend, I think they have a scenario where they could get in, which is wild that they could do that. And then if they win that game, they're ranked 20th right now. If they beat Texas, how much higher do they get?
I mean, I don't know if they get higher than 13th. But I mean, they could get the automatic bid.
That would be wild,
SEC,
though.
In the SEC championship.
If Boise State stays ranked above them, though, and then they beat Texas, and then they beat the other team, I guess they would eventually get above Boise State. They would put them above Boise State at that point. But that was just my thought. Like, what if the SEC champion isn't in the top 4?
Well, I mean, if Texas A&M finishes with wins over Texas and Georgia, like that would be pretty hard to overlook. Even with 3 losses, that'd be really hard to overlook because you're finishing
right.
With like that would be a pretty good finish.
Yeah.
But
speaking of Texas A&M, Philip says TAMU is the Timu. Only looks good from a distance. Bro.
Yeah. Which basically means they're not going to win both those games.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they're going to win this weekend.
And then Philip brings up what we talked about last week, which why is Missouri even ranked? I mean, number one, why are they ranked above Illinois? That's the most important question to me. Yeah. And number two, why are they even ranked? Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the truth is with why are they ranked is they're running out of teams to put in the top 25.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
I think that's a fair thought. Like, who else are you going to put in? So,
I mean, I was the one that put out the resumes, like, I don't know, about a month ago before Nebraska went on their losing streak, where it was like Nebraska next to Missouri. And it was like, Nebraska actually has the better resume here, but Missouri's ranked and Nebraska isn't. So It just is what it is. But all right, Zach, here's what we're gonna do. We have some games to get to, and actually, we're gonna do a commercial really fast, and then we'll come back and we will do rapid fire through these games because there's a lot to get to. We'll talk about Ohio State and Michigan for a little bit more of an extended period of time, and then at the end, we're going to talk about some bowl eligible teams. So we will be right back, but we are going to talk about these games when we get back. Stay with us. Have you ever wanted to watch all 22 film, that film the coaches watch? Well, now you can. Introducing the Coaches Film Room. Over at Minutes Sports, former college coach Zack Smith breaks down film of the most relevant teams in college football with a bit of a Big Ten lead. It's not free, so you'll need to sign up for the Colonel tier, which is $25 a month, but I can attest to you that it is far more worth it than that. With about 4 to 8 games per week, this is worth so much more money, not to mention Zach's analysis, making you a smarter football fan. Go check it out. The links are in the description, minutestosports.com. You won't be sorry. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, we appreciate you sticking with us. Please do like and subscribe. That helps with the channel. And Zach, we have results. I put a poll in the chat to see what people were thinking. It's 50-50 if Clemson would jump Indiana after beating South Carolina. Some people say yes, some people say no. It's 50-50 right now on what they would do. So,
yeah,
we'll see. Oh no, it just jumped back down. One person voted, it jumped up to yes, and then one other person voted no, and it jumped back down. So
I think if that happens, we need to storm the NCAA. Well, I guess the NCAA doesn't, because they've abdicated all responsibility. It wouldn't be them. We should go to the college football playoff headquarters, wherever that is.
Ward Manuel's house.
Yeah, no, let's not do that. We'll go to where they actually make the rankings, and we'll protest.
There you go. There you go. All right, Zach, let's talk about these games. Like I said, kind of rapid fire here a little bit. We'll talk about each one. If you guys have any comments, let me know, and we'll maybe talk through some things you guys have to say. Wisconsin and Minnesota, one of the greatest rivalries in all of college football. Wisconsin is actually favored in this one by 2 points. They're playing for the Axe. Minnesota is on the road. I put that wrong. I apologize. Minnesota's on the road and not Wisconsin. So, Zach, I think this game is really interesting, especially considering that Wisconsin is at home. I would have thought maybe Minnesota would be the favorite here, but I guess the home field advantage really put it over the top. But I mean, at the end of the day, with how they normally do ratings and stuff like that, this is kind of a pick'em game. I feel much more confident in Minnesota than I do Wisconsin, but I'm curious your thoughts. What say you?
I also feel much more confident in Minnesota. I think a lot of people, they look at the Oregon game with Wisconsin and say, oh, like they played well in that game, particularly their defense. I felt like that was more about fatigue for Oregon. And I think the reality is Wisconsin against decent teams just has not looked good. Like I don't believe in Braden Locke, and now he's going to go up against a pretty good pass rush with Ja Joyner on that line. He's going up against one of the more underrated secondaries in the conference, maybe even in the country, with Coy Parrish at safety, Justin Wally at corner. And if you're gonna ask me who's the better quarterback, it's Brosmer by a mile.
Oh yeah.
And I think Jackson is. I think they have the best receiver in this game. I think they have the best running back in this game. I honestly am curious where people think Wisconsin has an edge in this game.
So if last week Nebraska didn't go crazy and put up 40 plus their season high on the season, I would have said Wisconsin has the better overall defense in this one. Minnesota, obviously the better pass defense, but Wisconsin overall better. But Nebraska threw it all over the yard on them. A secondary that I thought coming into the season was going to be one of the best secondaries, not just in the Big Ten, but had the opportunity to be one of the best secondaries in all of college football as well. You don't have Hunter Wohler in this game. He's not, at least I don't think he's playing. He didn't play the last game, and I've not heard anything about him playing in this one. I could be wrong, but he is at the very least questionable if he's going to play in this game. And overall, I don't know if Wisconsin has the defensive line to put pressure on Minnesota the entire game. to stop that offense. I think Darius Taylor's going to have a pretty good game in this one. I know that he has been a little up and down this season, and I think Max Brosmer is going to capitalize on things. I have Minnesota winning this one 24-13. I just don't think Wisconsin is going to be able to move the ball. They put up 13 points on Oregon, and I think that was a good performance by Oregon. I think you're going to get a good performance from Minnesota's defense here as well.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I 24. I honestly am not sure if Wisconsin's going to score a touchdown in this game. I'm going to go 24-9.
Ooh, that's rough. And Philip is right. Tyree Walker is good, and I've liked Tyree Walker this season. But I don't know if he is good enough to carry the team on his back and win the entire game himself. It's so difficult for Wisconsin because the offensive line is really good at pass blocking. I think they are one of the best pass blocking offensive lines in the Big Ten. But the run blocking just isn't. It's not bad. I mean, it's not. It's just not as good as the pass blocking. And part of that, I feel like, is a good amount scheme in what they were doing in the run game. And I mean, it's not like they brought in somebody who's way better than Phil Longo to run much better scheme in this one. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. Wisconsin has shown up in some games. If they do win, I think Tyree Walker has a big day. Braden Locke doesn't have to win the game for the team, but yeah, I mean, Wisconsin might be in danger of having that bowl streak broken. 22 years, Philip says, and I think he's right. I forgot how long it was, but it's the longest bowl streak in college football.
I think on that, I just find it really hard. Like, I agree. I think Tyree Walker has been, I think, a really, really nice piece in that offense. I think Minnesota can put 7 or 8 in the box and just squeeze them. Like, because listen, and I think the other piece of this, obviously Phil Longo's out. They're still trying to figure out offense. I just don't think Luke Fickell knows what he's doing right now in terms of the whole operation, because he's got this hole at offensive coordinator. I think it feels like whack-a-mole almost. It's like, well, I've got a problem here, so I got to fix that. And then the defense all of a sudden springs a leak. But I think he's probably going to overcorrect with the defense this week. I'm like, where is Wisconsin going to get an advantage offensively? Like, because I think Minnesota can stack the box, and I think even if they try to go 3 or 4 wide, it's like, besides Pauling, who scares you at receiver? And you're certainly not scared of Braden Locke.
Yeah.
So I just think Minnesota's defense is it's one of the better units in the country.
Yeah. I agree. Their secondary, at the very least, is very formidable, and it's going to be a challenge for Wisconsin to throw on. We'll see. Like I said, Tyree Walker, I totally agree. Philip, he's good. I just don't know if he's good enough to win the entire game for him. So, but the other piece of this, which Philip brought up, is really the key factor of it all. Zach, is how much antidote do they have? Do they still have the antidote of confidence?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, he definitely ran out at the end of the fourth quarter against Penn State. So
unfortunately, he did. Yeah. Unfortunately. So, yeah. So, all right, Zach, let's talk Nebraska and Iowa. Nebraska enters into this game with a much better offense. Dana Holgorsen doing much better for them with 44 points last week. I do think that talks about the Nebraska offense being better, but I also thought the Wisconsin defense was just quite leaky in itself. If you want to beat Iowa this season, you need to score 20 plus points. The teams that have beat Iowa this year have scored 20 or more points, and the only team that they beat that scored 20 or more points, that Iowa beat, that scored more than 20 points, was Troy. Nobody in the Big Ten has scored more than 20 points on Iowa and beat them this year and lost to them this year. So if Iowa's defense shows up in this one, they can win this one. However, we saw Michigan State put up 32 on them. We saw UCLA put up 20 on them. We've seen teams that maybe don't have the best offenses in the world or have struggled on offense do much better against Iowa. Zach, is this that game again where Iowa's defense just struggles a little bit? They have a hard time. The offense, the quarterback on offense, Jackson Stratton, has a little bit more time to figure him out. What's your thoughts?
I feel like this is a hard game to figure out because it just seems like there's a little bit of stuff going on behind the scenes with Iowa. Like, I forget which player it was, but he left the team to prepare for the
Jamari
draft.
Harris. Yeah.
And Cade McNamara, like there's stuff with him, but like I think that's more injury stuff. But it does seem like there's more smoke there than normal. And Jackson Stratton did okay. They played against Maryland, and they played Maryland with a backup quarterback. So like I just don't take a lot of stock into that win. It is at Iowa, and that's the thing that gives me pause. Is I'm like, all right, at home with kind of figuring things out against a team that maybe was a little bit of fool's gold for in Wisconsin. I'm like, okay, I could see that, but Iowa. I feel like when Iowa is good, they're really good.
Mm-hmm.
But like to your point, they weren't really good against Michigan State. They've had a number of struggles against other teams, and you're just like, what is up with this team? So this is a hard one for me to pick.
Yeah, no, it's tough for me to pick as well, especially with the uncertainty at quarterback. Iowa is putting out this week, or Kirk Ferentz did say in his press conference that both Jackson Stratton and Cade McNamara are practicing. Apparently, it's at different degrees for how the two are practicing, but they are both practicing. So it is definitely possible we see Cade McNamara this week. However, I don't. I think if he didn't play last week, like there has to be something else going on that's going to not have him play this week. And even if he does play, I don't know if he's a game-changing playmaker enough for me to say like, oh, Iowa's going to score 30 points instead of 20 or 17 in this one. Like I mean, I know obviously Cade McNamara is a better quarterback than Jackson Stratton, but like I just don't know if he's that much better on that level. So we'll see how it works out on this one. I actually have Nebraska winning. I don't think they eclipse 20, but I have Nebraska winning this one 17-13. I think you see a better effort out of the Iowa defense, and I think they play better. But overall, I think Iowa's offense just isn't going to be able to get it done. I think Caleb Johnson, obviously very, very good. I think Nebraska's going to key in on stopping him. And with Reese Vanderzee out and stuff like that as well, like you already thin at wide receiver. Having Reese Vanderzee out again for another game this time, like I don't see where the offensive production is going to come from with Nebraska being able to key in on Caleb Johnson. Now, obviously, Caleb Johnson could make me eat my words. He could have 3 touchdown runs in this game. If he does, good for him. But I think Nebraska is going to key in on him enough, and Iowa's not going to have an answer. What say you, Zach?
I've got 21-16 Nebraska. I think I'm with you. I think Caleb Johnson will have a big day, but I think they will keep him out of the end zone most of the day. And I think they'll have to settle for field goals. And I think we have seen the Iowa corners struggle sometimes in tackling. And Nebraska's got they're not the best receivers, but they've got big guys in Banks and Nair. And I think they might be able to wrestle and get a big player too. And I think Raiola has some confidence. I think, him and Dana Holgerson powwowing and getting together and kind of mind melding a bit. I think that's going to be the difference in this game. And the other part of it is I really do think Ferentz. It actually, I would feel more confident if Cade McNamara wasn't practicing at all. Because I think Ferentz, I honestly think Cade, and not that Cade has done it, but I think the way Ferentz has managed the quarterback room has been the downfall of what could have been a much better season for Iowa. And I actually think the fact that Cade could be available actually is a detriment, not because Cade in particular, but I think the way he might try to manage and circumvent
get Stratton less time
Lester.
with the ones and
Yeah.
prepare him less and stuff like that. Maybe they try to game plan differently for the two of them. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's going to be too much. And I think Nebraska's defense isn't great, but they're not like they're good enough to frustrate you. And if you're going to spend so much time figuring out 2 different plans, I don't know.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. Philip says 35-17 Nebraska. So he's with us with a Nebraska win, but he thinks Nebraska will have a much better game offensively,
Yeah.
which
I think
Dana
there's a
Holgerson been much better. I can't say I necessarily disagree with it.
I think there's a pathway for that.
Yeah, it could happen.
Yeah.
All right, Zach. Illinois, Northwestern Illinois, 7.5 point favorites. It is at Wrigley Field, so technically, they're going to Chicago and stuff. But these are both teams in Illinois, correct? I mean, this is a game where we saw Ohio State fans overrun Wrigley Field. Maybe those Northwestern fans were just saving their tickets for this game. I have no idea, but this is a game that you could see a home field advantage for either team in this one. And Illinois, Luke Altmaier looked much better this last game than he has a couple other times this season. Pat Bryant was on fire, nearly 200 yards receiving and a touchdown. The defense played well in spurts. They got 31 points, so I can't say they played well, but they did some good things here and there, made stops when they needed to. But overall in this one, Northwestern just got blown out 50-6 by Michigan. I mean, you just gave up 50 points to Michigan. I can't see a route for Northwestern to win. What do you think, Zach?
I'm not picking Northwestern. I think Northwestern covers.
Okay.
And I think David Braun has too much pride to let what happened against Michigan happen this week. Like, I think they'll rally the troops. I think they will give Illinois the best version of themselves. I still don't think it's good enough for them. I've got 24-19.
Okay. I think Illinois wins this one 31-10. I just think that Luke Altmaier and Pat Bryant are too much. I think they found the running game a little bit more. It's improving. It's getting better so far this season. Illinois, we talked about them as possibly having one of the worst offensive lines to begin the season. They're actually doing much better here toward the end of the year. So I think this offensive line for Illinois could play well. And then the defense for Illinois, I don't see Northwestern being able to do a whole lot more on him. And there we go. Philip said it himself. Illinois, revenge game for them from last year. So his score prediction definitely does reflect that. Philip says 45-0.
45-0. There we go.
Fans charge the mound after the game. Do they still have the mound? I mean, is there like a bump in the turf, where it's like, oh, that's where the mound is?
I think that's a hazard. That's a safety issue.
Yeah, it probably would be. Be.
All
right. Good stuff there. Let's move on to Maryland, Penn State. I don't know if we have a whole lot on this one. Maryland probably has a backup quarterback. Penn State is way better than Maryland. It's at home for Penn State. Tyler Warren could have 300 receiving yards in this one. I have Penn State winning 42-10.
Yeah, I think the way I forget, is it Demolition Man where it's like murder, death, kill? I think college football nerds referenced that at one point.
Yeah.
Murder, death, kill. Penn State over Maryland. They cover.
It was funny. I heard somebody actually kind of making a case for Maryland a little bit that like, oh, well, they're going to have MJ Morris and Penn State hasn't seen MJ Morris yet this year. And like, nobody's really seen MJ Morris. And sometimes you can game plan for him. And then like Penn State always has these stinker games where like, they're not doing so well. And it's like, okay, I feel like they've already had those this season though. And I don't really think they were that bad. Like they did struggle against USC, but it was also at USC. So like, I mean, I don't know. Like there's just nothing that inspires me about this Maryland team to believe they can. I mean, Ty Felton might have a good game, but like he's not going to be enough on his own.
That D line's going to murder them.
Oh yeah.
Like it's and
over under 4.5 sacks.
Over. Mm-hmm. Abdul Carter might have 4.5 sacks. Like,
well, that's true.
I have a hard time believing that Penn State doesn't show up knowing that a home playoff game's on the line.
Yeah. PSU Jim says good game for the Penn State backups. Got some playing time by halftime. Hey, I agree with you, PSU Jim. I think and impressive stat from Penn State. Penn State has won its last 30 games against unranked teams. Maryland should just stay home. I tend to agree. It's kind of crazy. Like you would think the past couple years that Maryland might be able to do something because Maryland has in the past, kind of made a game out of some of these, but there is just nothing that gives me confidence about this Maryland team going into this game that makes me. I mean, they can't run the ball. MJ Morris is, I mean, he might have a few things up his sleeve for him, but like it's not going to be anything spectacular. The defense just isn't good enough. Probably their only hope is if they turn Drew Aller over, but newsflash, Drew Aller doesn't turn the ball over very much. So
Yeah. Well, I would think like for Maryland to even have a shot, they probably have to win the turnover battle by 3.
mm,
Because I don't
yeah,
think Maryland's not is going to struggle to score because
yeah,
they don't have a good offensive line.
yeah. No, I agree. It's honestly one of the worst offensive lines in all of college football. I'm pretty sure. So,
Yeah.
did you give your score prediction?
I just said murder, death, kill.
Oh, okay,
It's
all right.
yeah.
Yes,
Like
they
50 something to 10.
Maryland might die. Okay.
Yes,
Um,
that's my prediction. Pain.
it's funny. Our first two were upsets, and then our next two after that were like pound the favorite. I guess you did say
Yeah. I
Northwestern could
said
cover,
Northwestern
but
covered. Yeah.
yeah. But all right, this is another one that has a possible upset. Notre Dame at USC. Notre Dame is favored by 7.5 in this one. The over under is 51.5. So expecting some offense out of this one. I have some thoughts on this one that could make it a little bit interesting, but I'm curious your thoughts first, Zach.
So it's interesting because I think Notre Dame is really coming in with a lot of hype, right? Like, and actually, if you look at Sagarin, Notre Dame is the second ranked team according to Sagarin.
Mm,
FPI, they are ranked third overall. So, like, the computers love Notre Dame. Like, they think they are better than all the SEC teams outside of Texas. I mean, Sagarin, they think it's Ohio State, Notre Dame. Like that's who they think. I think it's hard to know how good Notre Dame actually is
yeah.
because Notre Dame, like their wins since the loss to Northern Illinois, which that's an albatross, but since then they beat Purdue. Yay! I know it's 66-7, but like they were taking out the frustrations on them. They beat Miami
Mm-hmm.
of Ohio 28-3. They beat Louisville by a touchdown. They beat Stanford silly because it's Stanford. They went on the road to beat Georgia Tech. They went on the road to beat Navy. They beat Florida State, which is a glorified group of 5 team this year. They beat Virginia by 3 scores, and they beat Army, who is just ranked, but now they're unranked. They beat them by 5 scores. So I look at the schedule and I'm like, man, it's not a great schedule. Like Army was 9-1, but you look at again who
Yeah, but
they've
Army
played.
Army basically played nobody, and Army has perfected their brand of football, which is very difficult for teams to go up against, especially teams that are not as highly skilled as Notre Dame
Yeah.
is.
And so I think you can make a case that USC actually might be the best team that Notre Dame has played because Texas A&M what didn't have their like they had a bad quarterback in. Like they've switched their quarterbacks.
Yeah,
So you could make an argument that USC on the road is the toughest game that they've will have played this season. And sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you want a hot take from me?
Yeah.
I wish Miller Moss was starting
Oh yeah. No, that's not a hot
because
take.
I think this could be the best passing offense that Notre Dame has faced all season. Now, I'm not necessarily saying Jaden Mayava is bad and like it's been bad with him. I think Miller Moss has been the kind of the better passer and has the better overall arm. Jaden Mayava has more playmaking ability and stuff like that. But I think overall, like it's not that big of a deal that Jaden Mayava is starting and not Miller Moss. But I think the only passing offense you really saw Notre Dame go up against was Louisville with Jeff Brom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they struggled against Louisville. In fact, they let up a bunch of points on Louisville, if I'm not mistaken. I
It's
forget exactly.
31-24 was the
Yeah,
score.
24, and that's a lot for how much they've given up this season. So you finally face a competent passing offense. Now, USC is not what Lincoln Riley normally has in a passing offense. They don't have the, high draft pick wide receivers. They don't have the, Heisman level quarterback that Lincoln Riley normally has. But Lincoln Riley still knows how to scheme up a passing game. And so if Notre Dame is not prepared to stop the pass in this one, or if Notre Dame gets down early, I know Riley Leonard has been better passing the ball than he was at the beginning of the season, but do we see a resurgence of Riley Leonard not looking as good passing the ball? They have to focus more in on the run game, and USC is able to jump out to a 1 or 2 score lead, and then Notre Dame is pressing, turns the ball over, and then you find yourselves in a situation where it's the fourth quarter and USC is up by 14 points, and you're like, they could do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm not going to predict USC to win. I'm just saying I see an avenue to victory here for USC, but I still think Notre Dame has been too good, and I don't think that Notre Dame will allow USC to get out in front of them like that. I think Marcus Freeman is better in big games than people give him credit for. His record's not great, but I think that he does a pretty good job coaching when he puts 11 men on the field. So I'm going to give Notre Dame the win in this one, 31-21. But don't sleep on USC. Don't be surprised if USC is leading in this one by third, fourth quarter.
So I've been going back and forth on this one for a bit. I think Indiana is going to send a thank you card to Lincoln Riley because I think USC is going to pull the upset at home. 24-20. I agree with you on Miller Moss, but I do think the one thing that Maiyava gives them that Lincoln Riley actually thrives with is a quarterback who can create out of structure. And I hope, and this is where I think it could get away from them. I think if they commit to the running game with Woody Marks, I think they can control this game. They can hit him with play action. They can hit him with some of the craziness behind the scenes. And I think again, Notre Dame has not really had many road tests. They had Texas A&M, but again, they played a bad quarterback in that game.
Right.
I think USC with their revamped defense with Danton Lynn, who like their defense has actually played pretty well this season. I think USC gets it done.
I could definitely see it happening. PSU Jim, he says, I don't trust Notre Dame's offense. They have to throw the ball. And he also agrees with us. He says, you're right. No way to know how good Notre Dame is. Don't be shocked if USC plays them to the wire and even potentially beats them. They do have talent. They do. I mean, USC is one of those teams that's still up there pretty high in a lot of people's power ratings. Now, it doesn't exactly, the record doesn't exactly bear it out, but there's still a lot of people out there that believe in Lincoln Riley's talent that he has and what he can do with it, but we'll see. So, Dave asked, I was watching Sky U Pod. Did you guys pick the Gophers already? We did, and we both picked Minnesota to win. I had them 24-13. What'd you have, Zach?
Oh, gosh. Oh, 24-9.
Yeah, 24-9. So, I think good day for Max Brosmer. Yeah. That's what I'm predicting. Daniel Jackson could have a really good day, too. So, All right. Let's see, Zach. Rutgers at Michigan State. Michigan State is actually the favorite here by 1.5. It is at Michigan State, so this is another one of those kind of pick 'em games because it's so close. But at the end of the day, I kind of question Michigan State being the favored team here with how Rutgers has looked lately, kind of the streak they've been on a little bit. I think Rutgers is a very dangerous team, especially with Kyle Monangai back. I think Kyle McManus looking much better now. This is a game that you could see Michigan fall in this one, and it's not because Aiden Childs turns the ball over a ton of stuff. Rutgers could just flat out be the better team and win this one by a couple scores. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that it's on the road gives me a little bit of concern for Rutgers, but I go back to the Rutgers Illinois game, and like Callie McManus I feel like has really improved, as a playmaker, running the ball, throwing the ball. Monangai is back into real form. And I mean, point blank, they should have beat Illinois last week. Now, that was at home. Illinois doesn't beat themselves. Michigan State does a lot. They almost beat themselves against Purdue, which that really concerns me. And they were at home. And so I think Rutgers is playing better. And I don't I don't trust Michigan State. I know Michigan State will probably feel like they've got to win this to get to a bowl game, right? They're 5-6. Philip makes a really good point. Are they going to be able to bounce back from a deflating loss? I think so. I think the coaching job of Greg Schiano from going from 4 straight losses to get this team back on the wagon to make a bowl game I think is more substantial than people realize. And I just don't think I think Michigan State again, I think they will flash. I think there will be a point in this game where you're like, "Oh gosh, Michigan State is going to pull this off." And then I think between the running game of Rutgers and the implosion of Michigan State, I just think Rutgers is going to be too much. I have Rutgers 27-20 over Michigan State.
Um, uh, yeah, I think that Rutgers has adjusted this season. I think that their defense isn't nearly what Greg Schiano hoped they would be, and I think that it's been a nice resurgence for Kyle Monangai coming back from injury, and I think that Athan Kalakmanis, like you said, has been much better, just overall as a quarterback, running, throwing the ball, everything. I, I actually. I actually think Rutgers gets above 30 in this one. I think 35, which actually is
Ooh.
funny. Dave put the same score, 35 as well. I only have Michigan State scoring 19, though. I think Michigan State's going to shoot themselves in the foot, have a turnover or two, and I think that they're going to kind of fall in love with the field goal again. And I think Rutgers pulls ahead late, maybe a score or two in the fourth quarter to really put them ahead and kind of put the game away. So, but I do think it'll be relatively close. Though I think that Michigan State will hang around for a good bit of time, and then eventually, I think that Michigan State front will just wear down. Kyle Monunga will start running much better. The holes will open up, and they'll take care of business in the fourth quarter. So, all right, Fresno State, UCLA, Zach. It's the rivalry game we were talking about at the beginning.
Bruins and dogs, baby.
I really really want UCLA to win this game. I don't want a repeat of Hawaii that they had at the beginning of the season. I don't think we'll have a repeat of Hawaii. I think UCLA is playing better ball now. However, that they only did score 13 against USC. That did leave me some concern with their, I don't want to say effort, with just how the game went on offense for them against USC. USC. I know their defense is improved, but you still should be able to move the ball better than UCLA was able to do on USC. It's wild that UCLA scored more points against Iowa than they did against USC. Just kind of crazy, but that's where we're at this season with everything going on. Zach, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think UCLA needs to be disciplined in this game. Like I think that's a big part of it. Like avoiding breakdowns, avoid penalties. None of this 3 personal fouls at the end of first half type of stuff. Um, Fresno State, they're not they're 6-5, so they're an average group of 5 team, but they've got talent. Like Keene at quarterback is decent. Delana at wide receiver, he has 900 yards on the season. So I mean, they're gonna have to defend, and I do think UCLA will be able to score. I think their playmakers on the outside, I think will be able to get some run. But I actually wonder if this is a bit more high scoring.
Hmm. The only
Because
reason I don't think it would be that way is I don't think UCLA will run the ball well enough for that to happen. I
yeah,
think they're going to put
that's
too much
that's
pressure
fair.
on Ethan Garbers.
Yeah, that's fair. So
And
what's your
Fresno State's
score?
secondary has not been awful this season. I mean,
Yeah, that's
they
fair.
did they did pretty well against Michigan. I know Michigan is their quarterback situation, but still, like, yeah. So we'll see what happens. But my score prediction is, like I said, actually pretty close. I actually have UCLA winning this one, 24-21. I think Fresno State will do okay on offense, and UCLA will shoot
Yeah.
themselves in the foot a couple times on offense. But overall, at the end of the day, the team that is the better team will take over in this one and win it. What's your score prediction, Zach?
Yeah, I got 34-27, which is
Okay.
probably a little more high scoring. I think you're going to see some more flash plays in this game. Like I think Sturdivant might get loose, but I think ironically TJ Harden has the most rushing yards of either team in this game, and he has 482. So running's not allowed apparently in this game, but passing.
Yeah.
Right.
Ethan Garbers was the leading rusher for UCLA there for a while. I did not track when that switched, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it did. Dave's right there with you. He says 45-10 UCLA. There we go. Eric Bieniemy getting the offense rolling. I
Mm,
like it.
yeah.
Philip a little bit lower though. 21-7 UCLA
Yeah.
in that one.
Yeah.
So
It'll be close, I think. Cause
yeah.
I think UCLA has gotten better, but I don't think they're like I think Fresno State's actually a good matchup for them.
I just don't know if UCLA is that like step on the throat and defeat them and leave them in the dust type of team. Like I don't I've not really seen that from them this season, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. The team that is step on your throat and defeat them and never give them any breath is Indiana, which they've done that to a lot of teams so far this season. Now, they did struggle against Ohio State. I think a lot of that just had to do with Ohio State being more talented, the home field advantage, the special teams obviously were a bad situation for them. Ohio State definitely deserved to win that game, no question there. But Indiana is going to try to have a bounce back game against Purdue in this one. And I think Kirk Signetti knows that you need. I like it, Dave. We'll get to that in a second. I think Kirk Signetti knows he needs some style points in this one. I think he knows he cannot only win this game like 28-14 or something like that. He can't do that in this one. I think Indiana rolls. I don't think it's as much scoring as we've seen in the past. But I definitely could see myself being wrong and then pushing 50. I have Indiana winning this one 42-7.
So my hesitation was saying my score is I do think there might be a possibility that he tries to keep Curtis Rourke out of harm's way after a certain point. I just think though, I think they want blood after what happened to them. And I think they want to reestablish. Give me 63-6.
Poor Boilermakers.
It's over, baby.
It's
Indiana's going to murder them.
Well, your prediction is pretty close to Dave. 88-0. Indiana, of course.
Yeah. I just think I think they will want to get up on them early and not let up. And I think part of it's, Michigan and Ohio State, they've Michigan they struggled, Ohio State they struggled. I think it's time that they get back into rhythm.
Yeah, I think so too. Philip says Indiana letdown spot. If they weren't playing Purdue, maybe. But yeah, if they were like playing Washington or they were playing even UCLA, maybe. I know they killed UCLA earlier in the year, but if they were on the road, maybe. But I mean, this has the makings of Indiana angry. Indiana needs to get some more, kind of good feelings back on their side.
Yeah.
After struggling against Michigan and losing to Ohio State. Yeah, I think
And
they blow them out.
it's at home. Like it's senior day.
This just frustrates me. I know you're right, Philip. I think that they're leaning toward giving him year 3, but he does not deserve it.
Do you think he gets a year 3 if they lose 63-6?
I hope not. I hope that's kind of what I'm hoping for now. I hope you're right that he loses 63-6 and Purdue's like, guys, change the plans. Change the plans. Get rid of him. That is just. I don't often say this because I do genuinely think that every team in the Big Ten tries. But if you're Purdue and you keep Ryan Walters around for year 3, I've lost all respect for your program. I mean,
yeah,
it's been an embarrassment of a season. An embarrassment of a season. You would not finish in the top half of the MAC this year.
Yep.
Like, I will be actively rooting against Purdue if they give him Ryan Walters a year 3.
Yep.
Which I don't typically do for Big Ten teams. I like to see Big Ten teams succeed, but not Purdue. If that happens.
Yeah, it's nope. No,
All right.
No.
Washington, Oregon in this one, Zach. Washington been very good at home, but they are not nearly the same team on the road. They're going to have to go to Autzen Stadium in this one. Oregon favored by 19.5, and I think that Oregon fans are feeling pretty good about this one. Obviously, it's a rivalry game. Obviously, anything can happen, stuff like that. They did lose, I think, the past 3 meetings because they lost twice to Washington last year.
Yep.
So they've lost the past 3 meetings. I think Dan Lanning, similar to the discussion I'm sure we'll have about Ryan Day wanting to really seal the win big against Michigan. I think Dan Lanning's going to want to seal the win big here against Washington. So I am a little hesitant to think Washington covers, but it is a rivalry game. Zach, do you think that it could be closer than anticipated?
I think the fact that it's at Oregon makes a lot of the difference. Because
Yeah.
I think if it were at Washington, I'm like, man, I think this could be a tricky spot for Oregon. But I mean, you're right. They struggled in all phases against teams like against Indiana, against Iowa on the road, and I mean they did not look competent when they were on the road. Now, granted, Oregon is closer than a trip out to the Midwest, but I just think I think Oregon they had a bye week. They've been able to be home for a bit to refresh. I think Dan Lanning, like he knows like this is kind of a coronation. I got 38-17. I think Oregon sits on them a bit. Kind of like what they've done with other games. I think early Washington maybe gets some offense, with their receivers. But the reality is I just think Oregon's going to be a bit too physical for them. And I think Washington's going to struggle to really make things happen. I know Damon Williams is probably coming in and playing more. Is he officially starting?
I've not seen if he's officially starting or not, but I imagine he will.
Yeah. I I think he might start, and I think he might have a couple of big plays early, and then I think it's going to be frustrating for him. So I think Washington will get up, or Oregon will get up by 2 or 3 touchdowns and then kind of sit, because they know whoever either they're going to get Ohio State or Penn State most likely in the Big Ten championship game, and they're not going to want to waste bullets for what's awaiting them in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think the bye week is huge for um, Oregon in this one. I really think that was one of the reasons why they struggled against Wisconsin. I'm not trying to take anything away from Wisconsin. They did what they needed to do to obviously keep it close in that game, but I think that the fatigue and all the traveling and stuff like that plays a factor there. I don't think it matters if they have Damon Williams or Will Rogers in this one. I think that at the end of the day, Oregon is just too powerful. Dan Lanning is just too mad. I mean, Oregon hasn't really done more than like 35 points in their blowouts this season. They beat
Mhm.
Illinois 35-9. They beat who was it? Purdue, like what was it, like 35 or 38-0. Like, I mean, they really haven't blown teams out all that much. So my first prediction was like, okay, 31-14, and then I rethought it and I was like, I just think Dan Lanning is going to want to just destroy Washington if he gets the opportunity to. I don't think he'll be stupid enough to leave the starters in for all that much time, but I do see a situation where, like, if the backups are, driving, then you could see a situation where, kind of like Ryan Day last week, where it's like, if we can score, we're going to score. And so I could see that happening. I have Oregon winning this one 42-14. I think Washington has enough talent on offense to score at least twice, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 14, 13 points, something like that. So,
Yeah, I think it's good.
Philip says Ducks 48-15. Like I said, I could definitely see him getting above 40 and rubbing it in. Dave is similar to me. He says 45-17.
Mm.
So, um, let's see. All right. I think that's all we got there. Zach, we will hit a commercial really fast, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about Ohio State, Michigan a little bit more in depth, and then after that, we'll have some conversation about bowl eligibility. So stay with us, everybody.
Nice.
The Big Ten Huddle is brought to you by the College Huddle, the largest fan-led college sports podcast community on the internet. With contributors from 70 different schools, you will get in all kinds of analysis from all over the country. Go visit thecollegehuddle.com to find your team and read articles from all across so many fans and contributors. The College Huddle is fan-made, fan-driven, and fan-fueled. back here on the Big Ten Huddle. We want to say we appreciate you being here, and we do want to ask that if you also enjoy basketball, go check out the basketball channel. The Big Ten Huddle dash basketball. It's the same as this one. It's just got the court background instead of the grass background. We do game recaps over there, power rankings just like we do here, and then we also have a once a week live show with me and generally some kind of guest. It's not a consistent guest like it is with me and Zack here, but some kind of guest, whether it be one of my friends from the college huddle or somebody else that I grab for a week. All right, Zack, Ohio State is favored in this game, 21 points. The over-under only 42.5. Now, it is going to be about 20 degrees in this game. Could be a little bit lower scoring because of the weather, the way things work out there. I think the weather actually plays into Michigan's hands a little bit here because they're going to want to slow the game down and maybe not have a. I mean, Ohio State's not been a super high-powered offense this year. It's not like they've been throwing the ball all over the yard, but Will Howard can make those 10 to 20-yard throws that, can be not big plays, but substantial plays for the offense. I am wondering if the weather will limit that a little bit, especially Ohio State's offensive line situation, starting their 5th different offensive line of the season. Michigan, their best part of their defense is the defensive line. You could see an advantage for Michigan there. I think it's actually likely you see an advantage for Michigan there, but that's the only advantage I have, Zach. I mean, overall, Ohio State is the better team in this situation. They should win, but they've not won the last 3 seasons. What do you think?
I am very concerned about the defensive line offensive line matchup because I thought one thing that Indiana did well was I wouldn't say they took away the run game, but they certainly neutralized it a bit. And I thought Ohio State would be able to kind of impose their will a bit more running the ball. They did well with pass protection for the most part. There's the one breakdown that led to the interception, and I think there was another sack that they had. But in general, I thought between Will Howard's mobility and the offensive line, I thought they held up in pass protection well. But I think Indiana's defensive line is really good. I think Michigan's it still might be the best in the country, particularly their top line. I think once you get beyond Mason and Kenneth Grant, if they have to rotate, then it becomes a bit more problematic for Michigan because they don't have depth. At least not the depth they had a year ago.
Benny's been okay this season. He's definitely not Mason Graham or Kenneth Grant level, but it's not like he goes in there and just gets shoved around. Like he's been good this season, I think.
Yeah, let me revise that. They are not as dynamic, and you don't feel them as much if it's their second line. So Benny's been good, but I think if Kenneth Grant or Graham are out, I think the advantage actually shifts a little bit to Ohio State. And I think that actually might be the game plan for Ohio State is, can you keep Michigan's defense on the field enough where they have to rotate guys up front? Because I think if they can do that and they score, I think if they get up 14-0 and they do it, maybe they take the whole first quarter to get 2 long drives and they score 14-0, I think this thing could get ugly quick. Because I think when you've really seen Michigan struggle, it's been when they've had to be on the field because their offense can't do anything. And then all of a sudden they're tired. But I think if Michigan is able to get a couple 3-and-outs early, and maybe they're able to drive a little bit because of the wonky starts that Ohio State has, then I think you have a closer game.
Yeah, no, I think you make a lot of good points there. I think the key for Ohio State on offense is long sustaining drives that really tire out Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, whether that is tempo you use where you're just keeping them on the field and they get out of shape, not out of shape, that they get too tired and they're not nearly as effective as they once were. Kenneth Grant still has been struggling with that this season, not nearly as much as he did last year. Mason Graham, I don't think that's been an issue for as much, but if you go up tempo and you keep him in for 9-10 straight plays, he's going to eventually wear down, and you can do that. So, but even if they don't use tempo, I look for Ohio State to, run around the center of the offensive line, run off tackle, run between the tackle and guard as much as they can, just to try and get the defensive tackles moving a little bit more. I can see a lot of RPO in this game. I can see a lot of screen passes in this game, just doing anything they can to get Graham and Grant moving to tire those guys out. I think that that's also the key for Michigan's offense. Is Michigan's offense has got to find a way to stay on the field for longer periods of time. I actually, the gameplay in the last few years for Michigan has been wear the defense down and then break off big runs. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, you're not going to be mad if you get a 60-yard touchdown run or something like that, but I don't think that is what you are going to want to help out your defense as much, because you get that defense off the field just to put them right back on the field after a big Donovan Edwards run or something like that. Those guys are just going to be even more tired because they didn't get the chance to sit out for a long sustaining drive by Michigan. Now, I think at the end of the day, Michigan's had a really hard time having long sustaining drives. I think that that's going to require them staying on schedule. I think it's going to require them getting in third and manageable situations, third and 4, third and 3. I think Ohio State's going to stack the box, and I think that Ohio State is going to blitz the crap out of Davis Warren. And as much as we did see in 2022, some of that short passing game where they were able to break tackles and then break away for big gains, I think the DBs for Ohio State are much better this year than they were in 2022. So even if Ohio State does blitz and leave their corners out on an island a little bit, I trust them more than I did the guys back in 2022. So I have this one, Ohio State winning 35-9. I don't see Michigan finding a way to score a touchdown. Maybe if Will Johnson plays, you have a situation where he gets a pick six or something like that. But I just think if Michigan finds themselves in the red zone, they're not going to be able to punch it in. Ohio State has been too good in the red zone on defense this year, and the field's gotten too small. And Davis Warren, I mean, Zach, he hasn't thrown a single touchdown pass on the road yet this season.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I just think Ohio State's going to be too dominant, and I think that Michigan will probably going to have to go to a silent cadence or something like that, similar to Indiana did. Which if that happens, they're not even going to get 9 if that happens.
Yeah. I told you a score off air that I thought about, and I'm going to think better of it. I initially, when I thought about this, 63-10, but I think that was my scarlet and gray desire.
Yeah.
When I thought, by the way, I do think there's a pathway for it, but I don't think it's going to happen. It's funny. I think whenever I have assumed that I think Ohio State's going to dominate, they've actually struggled. I think I'm trying to think. I remember back in 2005, and this is going way back, but 2005, I was like, man, Ohio State's so much better than Michigan. And, that was that year, Troy Smith really turned it on. You had Ted Ginn, you had Santonio Holmes. And I'm like, they're going to dominate. And they almost lost that game. And you're like, this is a team that has struggled all year. Granted, I think they had better quarterback play in Henny and all those guys. And I think that's honestly often been a pattern where I'm like, I think Ohio State's going to dominate. And then they get met by a physical Michigan team that keeps it closer. And I think you've seen that throughout the years. I think even 2014, even though they were 5-7, it was close up until the fourth quarter. So, and that team won a national championship. So I am wary of this because I think the defensive line deficiency or offensive line deficiency, potential deficiency concerns me. At the end of the day, I think that it's good that, not that it's good that McLaughlin went down. I think the fact that they have another week to go back and tinker with things with this offensive line helps. And I think you saw the difference between week 1 with the new combination against Nebraska versus the week 2 combination against Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
And while I think Michigan's D-line is better than Penn State, I don't know how much better it is. And
it's overall better. I think Penn State is the better pass rushing defensive line, and I say
Yeah,
that fully knowing how good of a pass rusher Josiah Stewart is.
very good.
Um,
Very
but I
good.
think Michigan is just the overall better defensive
Yes.
line at stopping the run and pass rushing together.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I think the fact that they have an extra week, I think they'll win enough up front. I don't think they will dominate. I think they'll win enough. And I think some big plays. I really like Emeka and Travion in this game. As seniors, I think that's going to matter. I think Carnell Tate's going to be a big factor in this game. And I think this is a game where Caleb Downs makes his presence on defense, maybe with a pick six.
Mm.
So I'm gonna go 45-13,
Oh,
but I think it's close at half. Like I think it's maybe like 17-10 at half, and like people are like a little nervous. And then I think Ohio State is gonna win that third quarter like they have been. And they might reel off 3 or 4 straight touchdowns in the third quarter. And it might be rapid fire. Like you get a pick six, and you get a short field off a fumble. I think the avalanche. I think it'll be close, and then the avalanche will happen.
do you remember Penn State, Michigan 2022? Sean Clifford, or not? Was it Sean Clifford in 2022?
Are you thinking 2021?
No, I'm thinking 2022 because it was the year that Penn State was playing Michigan and the score was like 7-14 at halftime. But that was not at all what it seemed like on the field. Like it seemed like Michigan was just absolutely dominating Penn State, but they
Mhm.
shot themselves in the foot a couple of times, and then Michigan came out later on and just absolutely, yes, it was Clifford. Thank you, Penn State guy. And then they just absolutely shot themselves in the foot a couple times, which kept the game close. And then Michigan kind of ran away with it. I think it was 2022, maybe it was 2021, but I could see something like that happening this game where like Michigan has some good offensive production early in the game to get them a couple field goals. Ohio State's offensive
Yeah.
line maybe does, maybe does something to inhibit the drive, false start or something like that. I have no idea. Something like that
Yeah.
that inhibits the drive, and they just aren't able to capitalize as many times. They have 14, maybe 17 points. It looks like a closer game, and then in the second half, Ohio State comes out in the
Yeah.
third quarter like they have all season and just rolls in the third quarter and puts it away, and then the backups come in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think it was 2020. It was 22. You were right.
Okay.
I think that's actually maybe the game script, kind of like I think Michigan gets enough stops where you're like, oh, like maybe they can hang, but like really you're just like, I honestly I think it might be similar to Ohio State Indiana where you're like, oh, like this doesn't look nearly as bad, but like I think Ohio State I think Indiana was lucky to get out of that 14-7,
Yeah.
even with the drop punt.
Signetti said so. He went in the locker room. He was like, "Oh, we're only lucky. We're lucky. We're only down by 7 right now."
Yeah, and then I think the avalanche happens.
Yeah.
So
Let's get to a couple score predictions here. Dave says 28-17 Ohio State, but being from Michigan originally, even though I have lived in Minnesota all my life, I kind of want to see Michigan win and watch Ohio State fans melt down. I can tell you for sure, if Michigan wins, you will definitely see Ohio State fans melting down everywhere. You'll see it on
we
Twitter.
I,
You'll see it at the mall. You'll see it out in the front yard. I mean, you'll see it.
you might see it on this show.
Well, that's true. You could see that. So, Dave, if that happens, you'll want to tune in for the power ranking show because me and Zach are doing the power ranking shows. Kent won't be here for it, so
Yeah, over under 100 times that we say fire Ryan Day.
I might rank Ohio State 17th if they lose to Michigan.
But not below Purdue. Not below Purdue.
Right. I can't put them below Purdue. No one could be below Purdue.
Oh gosh.
Philip says Ohio State 38-18. Michigan manages to cover against the backups. I think that's interesting. Do you think Ryan Day is going to put the backups in, or do you think he leaves the starters in the entire game? I think he puts the backups in for like the last drive or two.
But yeah, I think so. I was talking with Eric. This is a plug for Big Ten Football Talk, which is coming out tomorrow. I was talking with Eric from the OHIO pod, and he made a point that was really, really helpful, which is Ryan Day knows both how important this game is and also how important it is to have the whole season in front of you.
Yeah.
And so I think he will get revenge, and I think he will be smart about it.
That would be fun for me. I would like that.
Yeah.
The Penn State guy says 45-17 Ohio State. Dave will run it up. I think he will too. I think he's going to do something to try to run it up in this one. And Doug Shepard is right there with me with the 9. He's a little bit higher scoring than me with the 45-9. I don't know where Michigan's touchdowns come from. Like, I'm not trying to be a homer. I'm not trying to be, rude to like Michigan fans and stuff like that. I don't know
Yeah.
what happens for them to get a touchdown. Like I could see a big run. I could see a big run, but I don't see Donovan Edwards getting 2 or 3 big runs in this game.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to disparage anybody's score prediction. I'm just saying for me, I don't see where it comes from.
I could. So this is where I think it's going to come from. I think Will Howard is going to make 1 or 2 very Will Howard-ish decision. Like he plays really great, except for like 2 plays every game. And I think with this defensive line, I could see like a strip sack or a touch interception that's either returned for a touchdown or like in the red zone. And like I think that, and I think there could, but I agree. I think there's a lot of field goals in this game. Zavada's awesome. Like if
he's going to hit from 50 in this game. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah, he's a great kicker, and I think that is on the table for them to score a touchdown. Score once or twice in that fashion.
CW 128th ranked offense versus the number 1 defense, 49-12, only because the team up north has a decent kicker. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I'm with you. That's kind of why I had 9, because I think they're just gonna kick it, and I think those field goals will mostly come in the beginning of the game. And Penn State guy says Michigan's D is still good. I agree. Their defense is still good. That's why I think it'll be closer than maybe some expect at halftime, but I think the defense just gets worn down in the second half, and I think Ryan Day tries to run it up. So we'll see. Maybe Michigan. I mean, I didn't think Michigan's offense in 2022 could score any more than 20 on Ohio State. I knew Ohio State didn't have a great defense, but I did not see the big play capability, and they proved me wrong. Of course, they had a top 10 pick at quarterback at that time, and maybe some other factors that were going on, but they proved me wrong. So who knows? We'll see what happens in this one.
Yeah, I'll just say two quick things, and then we can move on. One is we and this is me as an Ohio State guy. You always throw the records out.
Yeah.
So like, I could see it where Sharon Moore, has really learned from Jim Harbaugh, where he has a completely whole different script, and just shocks Ohio State for a half. And I think if Ohio State comes out slow and sluggish like they have, and they get up and Ohio State starts to feel the stress, that's Michigan's pathway to win. You get up early, you take advantage of Ohio State's sluggishness, and then you just kind of let Ohio State beat themselves. I think that is on the table. That being said, this is why I thought 63-10 and why I don't I'm not saying that's my official prediction. I found it very odd that Ohio State practiced a lot of deep balls against Northwestern, only to not use it against Indiana.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm like, it could get out of hand early. Imagine first play of the game, deep ball to, I think they'll double cover Jeremiah Smith all game long, but deep ball to Carnell Tate or Emeka, and it's like 7-0. They get the ball back after a 3-and-out. Deep ball to Jeremiah Smith or Emeka, 14-0, and it's like, oh dear. And now all of a sudden you get to run into a light box all game long.
Right. I mean that's my big thing about the passing offense is I don't see any corners on this Michigan defense that's going to be able to hang with the Ohio State wide receivers for the entire game. I think that they will try to do some kind of doubling, but we saw when Indiana tried to give special attention to Jeremiah Smith. Carnell Tate just caught all over him, right? I don't know if "caught all over him" is a term I can use, but he caught all kinds of balls out there. And Emeka Egbuka had a touchdown catch as well. you can take away Jeremiah Smith. If you take him away and he only has 34 yards, guess what? Mecca Mbuka could have 100 yards. Cardinal Tate could have 100 yards.
Yep.
It really depends. So,
Yeah.
all right, a few comments really fast, and then we'll go on to the bowl discussion. Zach CW says, "You have heard this 100 times, Practical Jokers. I like Impractical Jokers. I'm looking forward to the Ohio State Oregon rematch. I am too, Snowbirds. Just got to get there first. We just got to get there first. I am cautiously confident, is what I've told people. I'm cautiously confident. I'm wondering if Day will do something like this. Why'd you go for 2, Woody? Because I couldn't go for 3. That was famously what Woody Hayes said at the end of one of the games when he went for 2. I'm curious if we'll get something like this. Like, could Ohio State score and put it up 55, and then he goes for 2 and gets it? Do you think he would answer this way, Zach? Because he's had some answers lately. Like, he's
I
tried
think
to.
so. Well,
I think he would too.
I think, and again, this is talking with Eric, but also listening to the podcast. He's bringing back some traditions for this game that he hadn't. You know, he has had Jim Tressel come into the, be more present in the program. Apparently, they started playing "It's Time for War" by LL Cool J again. They haven't done that since 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is. I think it took him getting beat 3 years to really embrace some of what his predecessors had done. I think he almost tried to be himself without embracing the rivalry almost. And I think now all of a sudden he's like, yeah, losing to this team changes you, man. Like, and it's changed his family.
Well, you heard what he said, right? On that Game Time interview?
Yeah.
So if you're not aware, Ryan Day got on an interview with 10 TV in Columbus, Ohio, and they asked him, I don't remember what they asked him, but Ryan Day was just going on, and he said something along the lines of like, "This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, short of a few other things, and my father dying. Which, if you don't know, Ryan Day's father committed suicide when he was at a young age. That's one of the ways he got so close to Chip Kelly, was because Chip Kelly kind of took on a little bit of a father role for him. But I mean, I'm not saying he compared it, but he mentioned my dad committing suicide in the same sentence as losing to Michigan. Like, it's hurt this man. So we'll see. I'll try to retweet that so people can see it if I remember after the show. But all right, there. Doug, going for 2 and getting it when they're up big would be beautiful. That's the thing. You gotta get it, right?
Yeah.
If you don't get it, he's not answering that way in the press conference afterward.
Why'd you go for 2? It was a mistake.
Yeah. Wrong play call. Will Howard was out there still? What in the world?
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Zach, let's do. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say Andy K has asked the same question twice, and I don't know if we have time.
I apologize. I didn't see it. If Indiana makes the Big Ten title game but loses, are they out? Well, that's an interesting situation.
Yeah. I
think we'd have to see what happens if Clemson beats South Carolina. But even if they don't go over them, I think if they lose respectably, I hate to give the same answer, but if they lose respectively, I think they would be fine. But if they got blown out by Oregon,
I think that could be rough.
Yeah, I think so too.
Which I don't agree with, but I think
no, I don't agree with it either.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought there, Andy. Well, honestly, it might not be the worst thing in the world for Indiana to not go to the Big Ten championship game. I mean, obviously, Indiana fans would want the chance to go win it, but you're taking a gamble there between getting a first round bye and possibly losing and getting knocked out. So, I don't know, Andy. I don't have a great answer there for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens next week. Another SEC team could lose to another bad SEC team.
I think Vandy might have a shot against Tennessee, because I don't think Tennessee's that good.
Yeah, no, they definitely have a shot against them. So Philip says shouldn't be penalized for losing an extra game. I'm with you. Yeah. I don't think they necessarily should either. It's what they've always done, and I don't see Ward Manuel as the guy coming in to change all that, right? Like,
if Ohio State loses, like who has the tiebreaker between Indiana and Penn State? Do you know?
I think Indiana does because Indiana has had the more win. I think the tiebreaker is more wins in your conference opponents, and I think Indiana, their conference
Mm.
opponents, have more wins right now than Penn State's.
Mm. Take that, all you people saying that they have a bad schedule, although everybody's saying Penn State has a bad schedule too, which is stupid.
The
Anyway,
problem is like everybody from five down, not five down, from
yeah, 6
I guess
down.
Penn State does have Illinois though, so maybe that would make a
Yeah,
difference. I don't know.
yeah.
I heard somebody say it was Indiana, so I haven't checked on it a ton. But if everybody from like six down in the Big Ten, their their records are all about the same, so it's really hard. But
Yeah,
actually, I think Penn State would have that. So, um,
yeah.
yeah, Penn State guy's saying it. He says, "Oh, why is it not coming up? Oh, my StreamYard's not working for some reason. I can't bring
Yeah.
comments up.
No.
That's weird." Oh well, let's have this last conversation, Zach, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah.
Conference bowl eligible / potentially eligible teams. So right now, the four big conferences, the ACC has 11. They have three more teams that have 5 wins. So if they get wins this week, they can move into bowl eligibility. Ohio State has 11, but they only have 13 teams that could be bowl eligible. The Big 12 have 9. They have one more, and then the SEC has 13. Surprise! That's what happens when you play a cupcake and everybody gets free wins to get them to that 6 point mark, which that's
Yeah.
happened with like 3 teams now. Oklahoma wouldn't have been one, but they beat Alabama, so they're there
Yeah.
now. But
Um,
13 with the opportunity for one more. What were you going to say?
I was just say it's actually we have 12 with this
Oh, which one did
possibility
I
for
count?
14. I don't know. So there's Rutgers, Nebraska, USC, Minnesota, Michigan, Washington, Iowa, Illinois, Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon are the 12. And the two that are vying for a spot are Michigan State and Wisconsin. UCLA, Northwestern, Maryland, and Purdue are out of here.
Huh. Okay. All right, I must have counted wrong. I apologize. So 12 in the Big 10 with the opportunity of 14. So Zach, my question to you, with looking at this and looking at the potentially eligible teams for everybody else, is 12 teams enough in the Big 10 to have like a successful, like, yes, we did have enough teams bowl eligible, or should the Big 10 be striving for more than 12 teams eligible for bowls?
Um, this is an interesting question. I'll be honest. Actually think I would rather have more. I'd have less teams qualify because they're better. And so, like, honestly, I'm rooting for Wisconsin and Michigan State to lose this weekend because I think I'd rather see Minnesota and Rutgers be 7-5. And you have
Sorry, I was muted there.
as you have 2/3 of the conference bowl eligible. I think that's like, if you think about it, if this were a 14 team conference and you got 9 or 10 in, that's a similar clip.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like I think it's a decent clip, like, and I think I'd rather have teams. I think I'd rather have less better teams than more mediocre teams.
Right. Um, yeah, so I think that as long as you beat out the ACC, that's what matters most, especially with the ACC and the Big Ten having the most conference teams out there. I do think you need to be more on par with the SEC, which if they have 12 and the SEC currently has 13, you are pretty on par there. But at the same time, the SEC only has 16 teams in their conference, which is going to limit how many they can have bowl eligible. So I don't necessarily think there's like a number that the Big Ten needs to get at every single year, but I do think if you're comparing yourself to others, like you need to be in range of at least one or two of the SEC, and then you do need to be above the ACC. You're always going to be above the Big 12. The Big 12 just doesn't have as many teams, so you're always going to be fine there, but you do need to have more than the ACC in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Do you do you think it matters that much though? Like, do you think it matters to have more bowl teams?
I mean, I didn't think it did at the beginning of the year, but then like now when everybody talks about strength of schedule and everything and the SEC bias, like they talk about it all the time like it's this thing that matters a whole bunch. So I don't know. Like to me it doesn't really matter all that much, but for national perception, I feel like it should since they're talking about it so much.
Yeah. I guess my thought is like so I'll give you an example. Like I really wish Iowa for instance would have been Iowa and Nebraska are probably my two that I'd pick. Like I wish that those two teams had actually won some of the games. Like actually like imagine if they were not both 9-2 right now heading into their game at the end of the season. One, it actually would probably have playoff implications.
Right.
But two, like if Indiana had beaten a 9-2 Nebraska team with, you know, Nebraska beating um gosh, why can't I think? If Nebraska actually beat Illinois and Nebraska beat has their win against Colorado and they're 9-2 and they have a close loss to Ohio State and a weird loss to Indiana, but Nebraska's ranked in the like 16th and they're vying for like possibly a dark horse, sneak into the playoff game against Iowa. Like I think that actually I think the quality of your teams at the top matters more than the parity, particularly if the parity's in the middle. And I think we're seeing that with the SEC. Because it's like, why does everybody think the SEC is good? Well, because everybody thinks that every team is good.
Right.
But like in reality, I think we know that only 5 or 6 teams are actually pretty good. And even then, I think they're ceiling. I think if you had more teams that proved themselves to be top 25 caliber in the eyes of voters, I think that would help perception with the Big Ten more than more bowl eligible teams.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that is definitely a piece of the perception that matters. Like I said, the bowl eligibility thing doesn't like to me. It's not really that big of a deal. Like the Big Ten plays 9 conference games. The SEC plays 8. And I know there are some SEC teams that have rivalries in the ACC, so they are still playing a Power 4 team. But half of the conference, you're looking at Vanderbilt, you're looking at Oklahoma, you're looking at Alabama, you're looking at teams like that don't have a Auburn, like that don't have you know, ACC rival that they have to play. A team like Florida is always going to be playing 10 Power 4 teams every single year because they're playing their SEC schedule and then Miami and Florida State. What needs to happen is the SEC just needs to say, put your rivalries in the SEC. That's the biggest difference right now between them and the Big Ten is because the Big Ten has all of their rivalries in the Big Ten, and those teams that didn't have their rivalries in the Big Ten, I'm looking at Nebraska primarily because they had the rivalry with Colorado, and I know they had a couple other in the Big 12, but like they didn't bring those with them as much.
Yeah.
And you are adding to it a little bit because you're revitalizing the Texas and Texas A&M rivalry. I like that. You have Alabama Auburn, but there's just too many rivalries in the SEC over in the ACC. So that is where I'm kind of hoping that like you know if they do break off into like a more power 2 structure, those ACC teams that are rivals with SEC teams will kind of all get in the same conference, and then the Big Ten can pick up the other ACC teams that don't have as many rivals because the ACC does the same thing. They have 8 conference games because of all the rivalries, and then also
Yeah.
Notre Dame needs to play 4 ACC teams or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Um. All right, Andy or Penn State guy was asking about the record thing. So I looked it up while Zack was talking, and the rule is it is whoever has the best record against common opponents in the conference. Obviously, that means that Indiana and Penn State would be tied. They've both only lost one conference game, and all their common opponents they would beat and stuff. And then if it goes to that, then it's not the overall record of all your conference opponents. It is the conference record of all your opponents. So whoever has the best conference record. So I'm trying to figure that out really fast. Because I feel like I don't want to give misinformation here. But at the same time, like, this might take a little while to
do all the math.
Zach, are you able to talk for like 5 minutes? Or maybe just go through comments really fast and see if you can comment on what people are saying.
Yeah, let me see.
I know you can't bring them up on the screen, but
yeah. Philip,
I just want to make sure I get this information right. I don't want to. Yeah. I don't want to be wrong.
That's good. So Philip said Indiana needs Ohio State and Penn State to make the Big Ten title game. I think he's saying that because if Indiana gets in and loses to Oregon, that would be another knock against them. I mean, imagine if Indiana beats Oregon though. Like that's like an automatic bid. But I think that there is a good level of a good concern there. Dave said, I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia Tech beats Georgia. I think it really depends on what Georgia team shows up, right? I think that game is played at Georgia Tech, which I feel like that would certainly be good. No, it's at Georgia. Yeah, I think Georgia Tech. I would feel much more confident if it was at Georgia Tech. I think Georgia's probably gonna smoke Georgia Tech if it's at Georgia. Let's see. Doug says, "Oh, Georgia Tech wins and Vanderbilt wins, and there's going to be chaos." Yep, there's going to be a lot of chaos if that happens. That would be amazing.
All right, I figured it out. Yes. All right, so it actually is the big thing is Illinois for Penn State beating them. So conference wins altogether for Penn State's schedule, they have 31 right now. Indiana only has 27. So if what I'm reading on the Big Ten website is correct, which I think it would be because it's on the Big Ten website, Penn State would go to the championship game over Indiana as it stands right now. Now it is a 4-win difference. I find it hard to believe that will change that much in just 1 week of play, especially with how many common opponents Penn State and Indiana do have. If you were wanting, like, if Indiana was going to do it, you're wanting USC to lose, you're wanting Wisconsin to lose, you're wanting. They did not play Minnesota. No, they did play. No, they didn't.
Yeah.
Actually, it doesn't matter because Penn State played both Wisconsin and Minnesota. I don't see a situation here where Indiana makes the Big Ten title game over Penn State.
Unless if they lose to Maryland.
Well, yeah.
Which
I don't think that's gonna happen. Though.
Which we both confirmed that's not.
Well, I almost just said, well, yeah, you need Maryland to win another game, and then I was like, well, that's stupid. They played Penn State. That would get you there. The thing there. But yeah, I mean, you're not playing enough different teams because UCLA can't win another conference game. They're already done. USC, I mean, even if they win, now that I think about it, even if they win, that doesn't add to their conference record, so they're done. I mean, yeah, you need Northwestern to win, Nebraska to win, Michigan State to win, and Michigan to win. Mm-hmm. So you're rooting for Northwestern over Illinois, Nebraska over Iowa, Michigan State over who they playing? Rutgers, and then Michigan over Ohio State. If those 4 games happen, it would be tied, and there would be another tiebreaker that I don't feel like going at right now because we're an hour and 45 minutes in. Yeah. But that would be it. So I hope that makes sense, Penn State guys. You are correct. The schedule of Indiana is not difficult enough conference wise for that to work. So yeah, he says appreciate the work, Jr. But no way OSU loses to Michigan, so it won't happen. Yep. I tend to
Listen,
believe. In no way Maryland beats Penn State, so that one doesn't happen.
listen. Don't talk to a Buckeye fan who grew up in the '90s that Michigan can't win this game. I've lived too many of them.
Well, now you're just being a Debbie Downer there, Zach.
No,
You're having a nice podcast.
I'm just saying, I picked them big to win, but I'm just saying, I I feel confident, but when kickoff happens, I will be like, as soon as Michigan has a good play, I'm like, we're gonna lose this game. This is gonna be bad.
Cautiously confident. That's where I'm at as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right, Zach. I think we put in a fine night's work. We hit our over hour and a half again. So we are doing that plenty at this point. But we will see. Anything else going on for you? Big Ten football talk. You said releases tomorrow or Thursday.
We're gonna release it tomorrow. Probably not at 7, probably later in the morning. I was gonna edit tonight and get it up, and I'm like, nope, it's bedtime. So we'll get up. We'll get it up in the morning. I'm
There you
taking my kids. They don't know this yet, but they have off from school. Taking them to Dave and Buster's for half price
Nice.
arcades tomorrow. So
That's sweet.
they have no idea yet. So
Did I ever tell you about Halloween for me growing up?
no.
Okay. All right. So story time for just a second. We've already gone off the rails.
Yeah.
So we do this at the end every time. So my parents hated Halloween growing up. They didn't want me and my brother participating at all. Lo and behold, my sister comes along, and then it's okay to participate then because they wanted to see her dressed up as a princess, right? But but they hated Halloween.
Wizards and witches are no go, but princesses absolutely.
Exactly. I was like, this is not add up. We could never do trick or treating, but now that my sister's here, we can. So anyway, we growing up, we never did like trick or treating, really anything like that. We really didn't do anything for Halloween because my parents didn't want it to happen. So we would always go to Dave and Buster's instead. And my dad one time said, "Yeah, we go to Dave and Buster's every year because we don't want to have anything that the boys look forward to for Halloween. So we try to keep their mind off of Halloween by going to Dave and Buster's." Well, my dad later that month, or not that month, next month, had heard me talking with one of my friends, and I said, "Yeah, we go to Dave and Buster's every year to celebrate Halloween." And my dad overheard it. We never went to Dave and Buster's again.
No. No.
I ruined it. I ruined it.
Oh man.
Yeah. I always have to tell that story whenever I hear about Dave and Buster's. More on football talk. The Penn State guy says, Zach, in the 90s, was Ohio State ever a 21-point favorite over Michigan and lost?
I don't know.
96 maybe?
95 and 96. All right, hold on. We're going to do some research.
I don't know what the betting lines were back then. But I mean, even if they weren't 21-point favorites, 95 and 96 were definitely, they were supposed to win by a lot.
In 96, they were 17-point favorites.
Okay,
at
so
home.
not 20.
And they lost 13-9.
Yeah.
In 95, they were 9-point favorites, and they lost 31-13 because some guy named Tim Batuka outrushed the Heisman winner, Eddie George. My 9-year-old soul was so distraught that day.
Yeah, and you try to find yourself saying that name, Tim Tiaka Batuka.
Biaka.
Oh,
Batuka.
Penn State guy says, JR and Zach, are you guys both from Ohio? Yes. I was born right outside of Columbus. So
I was born in Columbus, but didn't live there long.
Yeah.
Biaka Batuka was good. I'm giving him a bit of a
And Brian Myers makes a good point. They don't have Charles Woodson this year. I might be a little bit more, more cautious if Travis Hunter transfers to Michigan midweek. But
yeah, dude, we're both on the train that Will Johnson's not playing in this game, right?
Yeah. I think Colston Loveland plays.
Yeah.
I think he's been hurt all season. He's been playing all season.
Yeah.
I don't see him missing it, but yeah, I don't think Will Johnson's gonna play.
Yeah.
And if I were a Michigan fan, I'd be so mad at him. Penn State
you're
guy.
getting
Wait,
accused
JR,
of
are
being
you
a
near
Michigan.
Columbus and you're a Michigan fan? Think you said you're a Michigan fan. I am not a Michigan fan. No, I am an Ohio State fan. No,
That's how
both my
unbiased you
parents.
are.
Yeah. I try to be unbiased. There are some Ohio State fans that I know that won't watch the show because they say I give Michigan too much credit. But I just try to do a good job. I try to analyze the teams and give truthful answers. But I've also been accused of being an Indiana fan. So,
I think I've
and I'm not
accused you
saying
of
Penn
that.
State guys accusing me. I'm just saying like people have said that.
I think that might have been me. I might have said, JR is he's such an Indiana homer.
Well, you weren't there at the call-in show. I don't know if Terry's here or if Terry's been watching, but at the call-in show when Terry called in, it was giving it to Juck a little bit. He was kind of messing with him with the Indiana trash talk against Ohio State, which really imprinted a reputation on Juck. I didn't expect it to imprint that much, but he still talks about Terry on his show. But anyway, he was really giving it to him a little bit, and then after the show, I was talking with Juck for a second, and he was like, "Yeah, I noticed you weren't defending Ohio State too much, probably because you live in Indiana."
That's
like,
fantastic.
well, I don't know.
That's awesome.
I do kind of like Indiana this year.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not gonna call myself an Indiana fan, but I do kind of like them this year.
You should. Well, I do. Just not as much as Ohio State.
Well, yeah, that's true. PSU Jim says, can't see how Michigan scores many points in this one. Their passing game is terrible, and Buckeyes are going to stack the line. I'm right there with you. I am right there with you, PSU Jim. But I also didn't see how they were going to have big plays in 2022, and they did. Yeah. So,
to be fair, JJ McCarthy was a far superior quarterback, and their receivers were Samaj Morgan and Tyler Morris are good athletes. They're not great receivers. Like Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson, like they were underrated guys. I mean, Roman Wilson was a second-round pick. And so
Roman Wilson was a good wide receiver. He's not really been that for the Steelers, but he was a good wide receiver, I always felt like.
Yeah.
Quick little dude, good route runner.
Yeah, they hadn't shown it much, but they had the personnel. I don't think they have the personnel. I think that's their biggest problem is like,
I mean, Tyler Morris is kind of a speedy little guy. Samaj Morgan is, but I don't think either of them are refined enough in some of their route running and their escapability to pull off kind of what Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson were able to do.
Yeah.
So, Dave says Michigan beating Ohio State in '95 made everyone happy because everyone wanted to see Northwestern win the Big Ten that year. Well, except for Ohio State fans. That's true.
That's a big but.
Penn State guy says, "Oh no, JR, sorry, but I think he's talking about calling me a Michigan fan. That's okay, I don't care. But you're definitely, I definitely do have some Hoosier bias. I get it. I ranked him 5th in my top 12, so I can't really deny it.
Yeah, Homer.
I'll say this. No, I won't say it. Never mind. No, I won't say it. Buckeyes are looking to avenge 3 years of frustration. Wolverines are bad. This could get ugly. They will run this up. If they have the opportunity to, I am 100% convinced they will. I'm 100% convinced they will.
I think so too.
I think the last second TD against Indy was a preview for this week. I think Day is going to run it up as much as he can, paying back 3 years of disrespect. Yeah, I mean, if Ryan Day has the opportunity to put 100 up on him, do you think he would, Zach? Like, do you think he would keep the starters in that long?
No.
I don't think he'll have the opportunity to, but
yeah, I think he pulls the starters around like at the latest. If they're up by 3 scores, at the latest he would pull them midway through the 4th.
Yeah,
and I think to a standing ovation. Like, I almost wonder if they like start a drive, run a play, and then let the crowd like kind of give people a send off.
Yeah.
I the only exception would be if like Travion hasn't scored yet and they get down in the red zone, that he might put Travion into score like as a senior. But
I could see that if he hadn't scored yet that day.
yeah.
Which if they score 40 points, I think that he should probably have scored by then.
Yeah. Yeah. I have many thoughts of what could happen, but yeah, how they get points. But
Yeah.
I also don't want to get ahead of myself because again, I'm a paranoid Ohio State fan who lived through the 90s. So
I was in the Tressel days, man. I don't know what you're talking about. I
see,
just block out everything before Tress.
there's a reason why I like Tressel so much. One is actually I sat down with him for 20 minutes. We talked about ministry actually.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, he's a good dude. Like yeah, like there's so much I can't say just for reasons that like privacy reasons and stuff. But
Right.
but the thing that's etched into my soul as a Buckeye fan is that speech 2001.
That
You'll
was
be
the one
proud.
that won him over.
Yeah,
Everybody was won over in that moment.
You'll be proud of our young men in the community, in the classroom, and in 310 days in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Yep. Like, oh my gosh, inject that into my soul.
What is Brian saying here? He says, never underestimate the international. Am I reading that right? Wolverine conspiracy. What's that mean?
I think it's Counter Stallions reference.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I try not to talk too much Connor Stallions on here. I know there's a lot of Buckeye fans that want me to talk more. I've actually had some Buckeye fans tell me I don't give enough credit to Connor Stallions, but
credit.
Like I don't talk about how like he it's a dead
see,
reference.
I actually went to conspiracy theories instead of something fun. Sorry, Brian.
Sorry, Brian. We didn't get that at first. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you're like an Iowa fan, do you really want to hear like on a Big Ten show an Ohio State fan complaining about Connor Stallions? Like, I don't know. If it were me, I'd be like, yeah, I get it, man. But like, let's just talk football. What happened?
You know what we really want is we want casual Big Ten, or we want casual.
Bro casual.
There we go. What's his name? We need bro casual to come back to talk about Connor Stallions. That's what we need.
He was the best.
Yeah,
he was the best.
All right, it's like close to 11. Yeah. We gotta go.
I was about to say we can't hit 2 hours. So thanks so much for being here, everybody. We appreciate it. Thank you to Zach for coming on again. Like I said, we will not have a basketball episode on Thursday because of Thanksgiving. We will be back here, me and Zach, for a Power Rankings episode on Saturday night following whatever that final game is. I'm trying to remember what the final game.
Washington, Oregon.
Okay, that makes sense. So after the Washington, Oregon game, we'll get on here right away. We'll do a Power Rankings episode, and then we'll come back Sunday night. So, yes. Night, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Have a good one.
Night.